SABMiller. It's the world's second biggest brewer by volume and has a market cap of 597 billion rand. Headquartered in London, it has more than 200 beer brands in over 75 countries across 6 continents. The group is also one of the world's largest bottlers of Coca-Cola products. It trades on a price-to-earnings ratio of 26.7 and a dividend yield of 2%. As you were saying earlier, this is really the giant in the liquor environment. Would you like to elaborate on why it's a good investment decision before Paul knocks it down?
Well, this is a company that over the past, 10, 15 years has really taken the bit between its teeth and has gone offshore in a very, very big way. Yes, admittedly, even in the apartheid era, it was offshore to a very limited extent. But since democracy, it's been able to take its assets offshore, and it's been remarkably successful in literally covering the globe. I mean, in the intro there you say 6 continents, and it's incredible. If you look at some of the areas in which they operate, I mean, very few, if any, South African companies have had anywhere near the kind of success that SABMiller has got. And I think that is in large part due to the fact that it doesn't have a global brand, like Heineken, for example. It goes in there, it takes local brands, it reinvents them, it cleans them up, it cleans up the taste of the operation, it cleans up the packaging, and it gets in there and gets the people buying. And it's a phenomenally successful strategy.
It's a successful strategy that you can't argue with, and we'll look at the share price in just a moment.
No, look, I mean, a 600 million rand giant gorilla is what we're dealing with here. And as Chris says, the thing that they've done most successfully is to buy businesses like the one in Colombia, Bavaria, which they then, as they professionalized the manufacturing, professionalized the marketing, gained market share, improved margins. And that's a model that they've rolled out in other regions. I think why the market likes them so much is because they've done that effectively in the developing world. What worries me is that they've also gone on and done that in some of the established markets. So they bought Grolsch for a huge amount. They went and bought the Miller's business, which has now been combined with Miller's Coors, which gave them effectively a new shareholder in the form of Altria, because it was a share swap. They've recently done it with Foster's.
Are you saying they should stay to emerging markets? Is that really what you're trying to do?
What's interesting is because they get the benefit of the doubt from the market with regard to the market rating, as though they were only doing this stuff in emerging markets, but they have done it in developed world as well. And I sometimes wonder whether they're going to be able to replicate that success, because they're running out of badly run brewers to buy.
Does that, in your opinion, detract from the overall SAB story, their foray into the developed world?
Nope, not in the slightest. They bought Miller Brewing for about 6 PE back in 2002. It was very, very cheap, and it was a pretty badly run operation. As Paul says, it was Philip Morris in those days, now Altria, that was running it, and it was a bit of a sideshow. And they've taken that and they've given it a good shaking, but over and above that, they're now operating this as a joint venture with Coors, the Canadian operation. So that is actually going quite nicely. They had to do it to get a slice of the world's biggest profit pool in as far as beer is concerned. So no, I think it was a big strategic move, and I think it's worked out remarkably successfully for them.
A clever strategy, in other words. Let's have a look at the share price. Chris, if I can get you just to step back. And there we go, today.
Right.
See, he's good at managing the floor directions, old Mr. Theron here. There we go, perfect.
Look, I mean, there it is in 2009, right down there at around 100 odd rand, but it was at like 35 or 40 rand back in 2002. Particularly effective, and here in recent years, done even better. I guess what the market really wants, though, is that secular earnings grower. So that's, just
done
marvelous.
Even better. That's a little bit of a muted response when you look at the share price.
Yeah.
Sitting here just below 385 rand.
Look, realistically, 600 billion rand makes them a mid-cap by global standards. Not particularly big. That's well below $100 billion. That puts them in the same sort of ballpark as McDonald's or Nike or something. Not a truly big mega cap like Apple or like BHP Billiton, but not bad for a sort of middling-sized
Come on,
operation.
Chris, he's dissing the story on SABMiller here. Can't you get excited at the share price being at current levels?
Oh, I do. No, absolutely. And it's a fairly rarefied PE as far as we're concerned in our local market. But as far as international brewers are concerned, it's really not that bad. And the earnings growth is coming through. And I think once the global economy starts picking up, and particularly in the emerging markets again, I think we're going to get some fantastic earnings growth coming out of SABMiller.
Okay, Chris, we're going to ask you to come take centre stage here again as we continue with our SAB story. So, Paul, what would make you buy it?
Well, I don't know, not much. The fact is there's also been a leadership change. I'd be interested in Chris's comments about the departing CEO, Graham Mackay, has moved upstairs as chairman, which is against the King Code. You're not supposed to do that. The new CEO, Alan Clark, is really industrial psychologist, although I know he was, the chief brew master at the Isle Road Brewery, which is like their kindergarten. So that's a bit of a concern. They've got no market presence in the UK, even though that's where they listed.
Let's deal with each concern piece by piece. So let's start with the new management. He's clearly upset about it. What do you make of the changes we've seen on that front?
No concerns at all. Graham Mackay is going to become executive chairman, well, is executive chairman as from last Thursday, in fact, and will be...
So they don't lose his expertise?
No, not at all. And London rules are a little bit different to ours. I mean, the corporate governance codes there are perhaps a bit more lax than they are in South Africa. We don't have to follow the King Code as far as that. This is a London-listed company. I'm not saying it's lax, but I just mean it's perhaps not quite as strict as King. Look, Alan Clark has effectively been understudying Graham Mackay for the last decade, and I wrote an article at the FM some time ago actually saying Clark was going to be the next guy. It's not a secret. He ran Europe extremely well. I don't have any problems with Alan Clark at all.
Sounds as though you're just behind the times, and you think there's a lack of continuity, but you haven't done your research.
No, it's too much continuity that I'm complaining about. I think every now and then you need a bit of a fresh broom. So this thing about having the previous CEO become the chair and so on means it doesn't create enough space for the new guy to do stuff that's truly novel and interesting. You've got to then just implement the policies of your predecessor, because otherwise he gives you a hard time at the board. So in contrary, I would say I would have preferred to see Mackay.
You would have liked, sorry, I wasn't listening to you then. I stand corrected.
But that's just me. The fact of the matter is, though, that I worry about the corporate strategy, just to put it back on the table, that there is a limited number of Colombian badly run breweries that you can buy. So where are they going to go next? Because if they're going to do more deals like the Foster's transaction, then it worries me that they're going to just chase margin operations where there's already not that much more to squeeze out of the lemon.
This is another criticism coming. You've got to defend this. No, I want to see a little bit more excitement from your side, Chris.
Okay, I'm going to get very excited now. I think one of the
Can't wait to see what's going to happen.
I think one of the most exciting aspects in the next few years will be how SABMiller attacks Africa. They've already got a long-standing joint venture with Castel. At some point in time, I believe the Castel family will sell out. Between the two of them, they cover 40 out of the 54 countries in Africa. That is huge growth coming through there. And you need to have a company, you need to have management that actually understands Africa. AB InBev, the biggest brewer in the world, has got no presence in Africa whatsoever. And that's one of the reasons why they'd like to get their grubby paws on this mid-cap company, as Paul calls it. So I think if that happens, that also adds another little bit of flavor to the whole recipe here. If we get AB InBev making an unsolicited bid for SABMiller, I think the share price will go way north of this level.
That sounds very exciting and very tempting if you're already invested in SABMiller.
No, and the truth is, I do like these kinds of emerging market aspirational consumer stories. My only concern, as I say, is that beer is not as exciting a future prospect as some others. You'll notice, for example, in America, that people are drinking less beer, because beer is like a working class drink, and sooner or later people would prefer not to be in the working classes. Then they start drinking expensive vodkas or nothing at all, because they realize that beer with all those carbs is really not very good for the waistline.
Chris, he keeps upsetting our audience. Now we're going to have people phoning in tomorrow and saying beer isn't a working class drink. Is that the reality here? I mean, are we allowing him to take this stance?
The beauty of beer is that it covers so many different segments. You've got mainstream, which is, yes, largely working class, but then you've got premium beers, some very esoteric. And Paul's alluded to one of them, Grosch, for example, very expensive beer. Pilsner Urquell, these type of beers in the SABMiller stable. And there are plenty more. So you cover the entire spectrum. I don't regard myself as being particularly working class at all. And I love a good six-pack of PU on a hot day.
You see you've even upset Chris. I don't know if he's going to come back on the show. You can't just throw out those analogies willy-nilly. All right. So now, hot or not, are we going to SAB?
You know, at the end of the day, this is a stock that I would ordinarily be loving, but on a 26 PE with all of the growth that's anticipated, I just think it's a little too expensive, so I'm going to go with not hot.
Mr. Gilmour, follow in his footsteps, hot or not on SABMiller?
I agree it's in rarefied territory, but I think it can only go higher. I think it's very hot.